incredible television producer who had great success with Danny Thomas and Van Dyke and Andy Griffith Show. And for a moment, he was like the comedy producer.
Ron Howard is basically Hollywood's Mr. Nice Guy. He's the warm, soft-spoken director who gave us A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, and The Da Vinci Code. He's Opie from The Andy Griffith Show, for crying out loud. The guy has the reputation of being kind, diplomatic, and nearly unshakable. So when you hear that he utterly despised someone, we're talking full-on loathing. Stick around till the end, because we're not just revealing who it was, we're diving into why it got so bad. Let's get into it. The public image of Ron Howard. Few people in Hollywood have managed to carry the same kind of warmth and sincerity throughout their careers the way Ron Howard has. From the moment he stepped in front of a camera as a toddler, it was as if the spotlight recognized something special in him. And not just talent, but a certain quiet charm that never faded, even as he aged and evolved. Ron Howard's story isn't just about a kid who made it big and then faded out like so many others. No, his journey spans more than 6 decades, and instead of burning out, he somehow kept burning brighter. Isn't it fascinating how someone can stay in the public eye for that long and still be genuinely liked by almost everyone? Born Ronald William Howard on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, he wasn't exactly a stranger to the entertainment world. His parents, both actors, naturally brought him into that sphere, but they did it without turning into the nightmare stage parents people often whisper about. Howard himself would later say that his mom and dad were supportive but grounded, showbiz people without the ego. And perhaps that's part of what kept him so down to earth. When a child grows up with fame but doesn't lose their head over it, don't you have to wonder, what did their parents get so right? Howard's first big break came when he was just 5, acting in various TV shows and films, but it was his role as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show that sealed his place in America's living rooms and hearts. From 1960 to 1968, viewers watched little Ronnie grow up on screen. And yet, even back then, his attention wasn't only on delivering lines or hitting marks. As he once reminisced, he was always fascinated by what went on behind the camera, the way the lights were positioned, how lenses were chosen, and how every technical decision influenced the mood of a scene. That sort of curiosity isn't something you expect from a kid. Was it possible, even back then, that the future director was quietly forming behind that sweet Opie grin? Ron Howard is known for being one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, so when he actually despises someone, you just know it had to be serious. But who was it? Stick around, because the full story will leave you speechless. After his Andy Griffith years, he didn't just coast. He stepped into another beloved role, Richie Cunningham in the wildly successful Happy Days. For 7 years, he played the wholesome, good-natured, all-American teenager. But even while playing Richie, Howard was already thinking beyond acting. By age 15, he had become obsessed with directing. He devoured books on filmmaking, pestered directors with questions, and treated every set as a classroom. Many young actors struggle to transition into adult roles, but Howard wasn't aiming to stay in front of the camera forever. He had bigger dreams, and instead of fighting the current, he let it take him to a place where he could call the shots, literally. And it wasn't just that he wanted to direct, he was good at it. Very good. Over the years, he built an impressive resume of critically acclaimed films, from Apollo 13 to A Beautiful Mind, which won him 2 Academy Awards. In total, he's earned 2 Oscars, 7 Emmys, and 2 Golden Globes. That's not just longevity, that's excellence. Still, despite his success, he never seemed to develop that hard Hollywood edge. Isn't it a little rare to hear of someone that talented who isn't also, well, Difficult? That's where Howard's reputation as the nicest guy in Hollywood comes into play. Journalist Peggy Hertz once commented in 1974 that Howard seemed too nice to be real. But that's the thing, his niceness wasn't an act. Time and time again, people who've worked with him describe him in almost identical terms: humble, kind, generous, and professional. His approach to work was methodical but warm, and he brought a certain calm to chaotic Hollywood sets. In fact, people often say he made those stressful environments feel like family gatherings. And it wasn't just his co-workers who admired him. Friends like Henry Winkler and Tom Hanks, who both have reputations as good guys themselves, shared deep bonds with Howard that went beyond Hollywood. Winkler once called him a brother, and Hanks has spoken often about how easy it is to work with him. That kind of camaraderie doesn't come from ego or power. It comes from trust, mutual respect, and consistent decency. Perhaps that decency can be traced back to his roots. Unlike many child stars who struggle with identity or face breakdowns later in life, Howard had a strong foundation. He often said his parents weren't interested in fame for fame's sake. They cared about doing good work and staying balanced. He never felt like a pawn in someone else's dream. Can you imagine how different the entertainment world might look if more young stars had that kind of support? Even critics who don't always gush about everyone in the industry have had trouble finding a bad word to say about Howard. Brian Dennehy, a celebrated actor in his own right, once observed that Howard's private self mirrored his public persona. That's rare, especially in an industry known for its smoke and mirrors. He called him sweet, unaffected, almost rural, suggesting that Howard's wholesomeness wasn't an image, it was just who he was. The hidden tension on The Andy Griffith Show. To millions of viewers, Mayberry was the picture of peace, charm, and small-town harmony. Who didn't love the gentle wisdom of Sheriff Andy Taylor, the lovable antics of Barney Fife, or the soft-spoken sweetness of little Opie? It all felt so real, like a world anyone would be lucky to live in. But behind the scenes of The Andy Griffith Show, the reality was a bit more complex. While the laughter and simplicity flowed effortlessly on screen, off-camera, not everything was as sunny. There was an undeniable contrast between what audiences saw and what actually unfolded when the cameras weren't rolling. And at the heart of this off-screen complexity was one cast member whose relationship with the rest of the team was anything but easy: Frances Bavier, who played the beloved Aunt Bee. People who worked on the show have since spoken about how Frances, a seasoned New York stage actress, often struggled to fit in with the relaxed and jovial environment of the set. While most of the cast embraced a light-hearted, family-like dynamic, Frances approached her work with intense professionalism. It wasn't that she was unfriendly, but rather that she didn't join in on the casual joking or banjo-strumming breaks that peppered the workday. Instead, she kept to herself, often retreating to her dressing room whenever things got too playful. Why didn't she join in? Was it shyness, pride, or just her way of protecting her space in an unfamiliar world? According to those who knew her, she was incredibly dedicated to her craft, but also deeply sensitive. Some described her as moody or touchy, and others simply called her distant. Sheldon Leonard, the show's creator, once referred to her as rather remote. She didn't dislike her co-stars necessarily, she just didn't quite relate to their way of working. Ron Howard, who played Opie, later said, "Frances very much kept to herself. I don't think she ever felt part of what these boys were up to and their shenanigans." And when you think about it, how hard must it have been for her to be surrounded by people constantly laughing and goofing off, while she felt like an outsider in her own workplace? In fact, there were a few moments when things went beyond simple awkwardness. Crew members recalled instances when Frances reacted strongly to behavior she found inappropriate. In one now-famous story, she reportedly struck George Lindsay, who played Goober, with her umbrella because he used foul language near her. It wasn't meant as an act of hostility, but it revealed just how deeply she felt about certain standards of behavior. She held herself and everyone else to a level of decorum that just didn't align with the show's backstage vibe. Of course, all of this happened without the audience knowing a thing. Isn't it amazing how well they all managed to keep the tension behind closed doors? The production team quickly learned how to work around the situation. When Frances was upset, she wouldn't throw a tantrum. Instead, she'd call in saying she was unwell or show up late, a subtle signal to the crew that something had rubbed her the wrong way. Makeup artist Lee Greenway even became something of a peacemaker, someone who could sense when things were getting tense and help smooth it all over. The entire team developed a kind of unspoken system to make things work without letting the friction affect what people saw on screen. And it worked. The chemistry the cast shared on screen, especially the loving dynamic between Aunt Bee and Andy, was so convincing that few viewers ever suspected anything was amiss. That's a testament to their professionalism, isn't it? To be able to deliver warmth and joy to audiences week after week, even when personal relationships were sometimes strained, takes a level of discipline and focus that most people never see. It also makes one wonder, how often do we assume that what we see on TV mirrors real life, when in reality, it's just a carefully curated illusion? And if you think that illusion was always easy to maintain, just wait till you hear what Ron Howard had to say about his time working with Frances Bavier. Stick with me, because what he shared offers a rare truth that you absolutely need to hear to believe. Ron Howard's experience working with Frances Bavier. Ron Howard, as a young boy growing up in the spotlight of the Andy Griffith Show, found himself surrounded by a mostly warm and welcoming cast. He was just a child then, bright-eyed, full of curiosity, and still learning how the world of television worked. While Andy Griffith and Don Knotts treated him like a little brother on and off the screen, offering gentle guidance and encouragement, not every adult on set extended the same kindness. One person who stood out for her very different demeanor was Frances Bavier, the seasoned actress who played Aunt Bee. Now, one might assume that someone playing such a loving, comforting role would be just as tender behind the scenes, but that wasn't quite the case. People often wonder what could have caused the distance between young Ron and the woman the audience knew as his nurturing aunt. Was it something personal? Not really. From what Ron would later share in interviews, it became clear that the tension wasn't rooted in animosity, but in a profound difference in temperament and working styles. Frances Bavier came from a formal stage background. She was trained, polished, and deeply professional, sometimes to a fault. She liked structure, she valued quiet, and above all, she took the craft of acting very seriously. On the other hand, Ron was still a child, a well-mannered and talented one, sure, but still a child with bursts of energy and an occasional need for a redo. He thrived in the playful, family-like atmosphere that Andy Griffith encouraged on set. But Bavier? Not so much. Howard once recalled how there was a kind of formality about Bavier that made her seem distant. He said she played warm and open on camera. Indeed, viewers adored her portrayal, but between takes, she became reserved, almost cold. Can you imagine how confusing that must have felt for a kid? One moment you're being hugged by Aunt Bee in front of the cameras, and the next, she's barely acknowledging you. He didn't understand at the time that adults sometimes separate their work from their emotions, or that someone could simply be having a bad day or many bad days. But her withdrawn nature made it hard for young Ron to feel entirely at ease around her. Frances Bavier, as Howard remembered, had little tolerance for distractions, and children, however talented, are naturally full of them. If a scene required multiple takes, or if Ron's natural energy momentarily disrupted her rhythm, she wasn't shy about showing her frustration. Unlike others on set who would gently redirect or laugh things off, Bavier could be stern, even critical. It wasn't that she was mean, necessarily, but she had very little patience for what she may have seen as unprofessional behavior, even from a kid. And Ron, being sensitive and still figuring out the rules of grown-up interaction, took that coldness to heart. Looking back, Howard admitted that those interactions sometimes left him feeling confused and a little hurt. He said, "I remember feeling bewildered sometimes." And honestly, who wouldn't be? Years later, as an acclaimed filmmaker known for his calm leadership, Howard would often credit his early TV experiences for teaching him how to manage difficult personalities. He said that watching how the producers and crew handled Bavier's temperament gave him a front-row seat to real-world conflict resolution. That early experience taught me that professionals sometimes have to work together effectively regardless of personal feelings, he reflected. And isn't that a truth many of us learn the hard way? That sometimes, in life and work, we won't always click with everyone, and that's okay. What matters is how we choose to rise above it. The long-term impact and final reconciliation. As the years quietly rolled on after the Andy Griffith Show had ended its beloved run, something unexpected happened. Time began to soften what once felt like hardened grudges and unspoken frustrations. The set of that classic television show had been a place of warmth for audiences, but behind the scenes, not every relationship flowed with the same ease. Frances Bavier, who famously played the sweet and caring Aunt Bee, had a complicated and often tense relationship with Andy Griffith himself. But life has a strange way of shifting our perspectives, especially as we age. Isn't it something how people who once clashed can find clarity when they have a little distance, a little silence, and maybe a ticking clock to remind them what truly matters? In 1989, just 4 months before her death, Bavier made a phone call that caught Andy Griffith completely off guard. She was battling terminal cancer, and in those reflective, sobering days, she reached out to make peace. According to Griffith, she said words that carried a heavy weight. "I'm sorry we didn't get along better. It was my fault." Then, almost as if she was trying to lift something long settled off her chest, she added, "You ran the show, and you made the show a success. I'm just sorry we didn't get along better." It was the kind of conversation that doesn't come often in life, honest, raw, and full of the kind of vulnerability that only shows up when someone knows they're running out of time. And isn't that always the case? Why do people often wait until the very end to say the things that matter most? This call was especially surprising when you consider the history. Back in 1972, both Griffith and Ron Howard had tried to visit Bavier in North Carolina after she'd retired. She turned them away. She'd grown isolated in her final years, reportedly living alone with 14 cats, choosing solitude over social ties. Many fans never knew this quieter, more withdrawn side of her. It was a far cry from the warm, apron-wearing aunt they'd grown to love on screen. And yet, in that last phone call, it was as if she finally pulled back the curtain, just a little. Ron Howard, who was just a boy when the show began, didn't always understand Bavier's distant demeanor. But as he matured, his understanding deepened. He came to believe that her aloofness may have had more to do with personal struggles than personal disdain. She was a seasoned stage actress, after all, And perhaps she had expected a different trajectory for her career. Could it be that she felt confined by the image of Aunt Bee, a character so beloved that it eclipsed everything else she might have wanted to be known for? Howard once noted, "I just don't think she enjoyed being around children that much." But there was no bitterness in his voice when he said it, just empathy. He grew to see that her behavior may have been shaped by internal battles and unmet expectations, and despite their differences, he never dismissed her talent. He gave her credit where it was due, saying she was a consummate professional and that her portrayal of Aunt Bee played a huge role in making the show a success. Isn't it powerful when people can look back on difficult relationships with compassion instead of resentment? That early experience with Bavier turned out to be more than just a childhood memory. It became a lesson that Howard would carry into his later work as a director. He learned to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper, and try to understand what might be causing friction before judging someone too quickly. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.